You know it's a bad day when you wake up handcuffed to your enemy. It gets worse when that enemy also happens to be a detective who thinks you're the reason you're both trapped in a snow-choked cabin, 3 days from civilization. Snow lashed against the wooden walls, a violent drumming that made the cabin tremble, as if it were a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. The air inside was frigid, every breath curling into smoke as I tried to shift, only to feel the sharp tug of cold iron biting into my wrist. I looked down and there he was, Ethan Callahan, the storm in human form, sprawled half asleep beside me, cuffed to my arm like some cruel joke the universe thought was funny. We weren't friends. We weren't even on the same side of the law, not really. He hunted answers for the police department, neat little boxes of truth wrapped in his self-righteousness. Me? I lived in the shadows between those boxes, an informant, a survivor, a man who had learned the hard way that justice wasn't blind, it just picked its favorites. The last thing I remembered was the screech of tires, headlights slicing through the snow, and then darkness swallowing us whole. Now there was only this cabin, this storm, and him. "You've got to be kidding me," Ethan muttered as he stirred, his eyes flashing open like a wolf roused from sleep. The moment he realized we were chained together, his jaw tightened. "Of all the people in this goddamn world, why you?" I almost laughed. "Good morning to you too, detective. Sleep well." The storm roared louder, rattling the window panes, and something in his expression shifted. Not softer, never that, but calculated, like he was already searching for an escape. "We need to get out of here," he said. I tugged at the cuffs, the metal scraping against my skin. "Unless you've got a key hidden somewhere I can't see, I'd say we're not going anywhere fast." His gaze locked on mine, full of fire, full of everything I both hated and couldn't look away from. 3 days. That's what the old clock on the mantel seemed to whisper with every tick. 3 days in a cabin with a man who thought I was nothing more than a liability, maybe even a threat. And yet, as the wind howled outside and the fire sputtered low, there was an electricity between us that neither of us wanted to name. You can tell a lot about a man by how he wakes up in a disaster. Ethan Callahan, for example, woke like a soldier. Alert, hostile, already assessing the room for threats. Me? I was still trying to figure out if I had frostbite on my toes. The silence between us stretched thin, sharper than the cuffs that dug into my wrist. Ethan stood, pulling me with him, his grip iron around the chain. "We can't stay on the floor. Move." I stumbled after him, half because the handcuffs forced me to and half because he had that tone, the one that brooked no argument. The cabin was sparse. A table with one chair, a small fireplace, shelves stacked with dusty cans. Someone's hunting retreat, abandoned for the season. "Who brought us here?" I asked, scanning for clues. My head still throbbed from the crash, but my instincts were awake now, crawling under my skin. "I don't know yet," Ethan said curtly, pacing toward the window. Snow plastered the glass, a white wall that made the world outside disappear. But whoever it was, they didn't plan for us to walk out anytime soon. I leaned against the table, my cuffed wrist yanking slightly as he moved. "Great. Snowed in, no car, no phone signal, and stuck with you. Romantic getaway of my nightmares." He shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "You think this is a joke?" "No," I said, smirking despite myself. "But if I don't laugh, I'll start screaming. And you don't want to be stuck in here with me screaming." The fire cracked, filling the silence between us. My smirk faded as I realized the deeper truth. I wasn't scared of the storm. I wasn't even scared of whoever had dumped us here. I was scared of Ethan, or maybe of what being this close to him for 3 days would do to me. Because Ethan Callahan wasn't just my rival. He wasn't just the detective who had nearly ruined my life more than once. He was also the man I had watched from the shadows for years, the one who lived so fiercely by his convictions it made me ache. And now he was chained to me. The first night was the worst. We argued over everything, where to sleep, how close to sit by the fire, whether or not the canned beans had expired. He had a way of taking command, barking orders as if I were his rookie partner, not his reluctant cellmate. "You're not eating those," he said flatly as I pried open a can with my knife. "Why not?" They're swollen. Botulism risk. I raised a brow. Detective Callahan, expert in canned goods. Impressive resume. His jaw ticked. I'm trying to keep us alive. Well, forgive me for not leaping at the chance to starve gracefully beside you. In the end, he was right, the beans did smell off. I threw them into the snow through a crack in the door, muttering curses under my breath. He didn't say I told you so, but his silence screamed it. Later, when the fire dwindled to embers, we huddled on the creaky bed pushed against the wall. The mattress sagged, the blankets thin, but it was warmer than the floor. Still, the moment our shoulders brushed, I tensed. Relax, Ethan muttered, eyes closed. I'm not going to bite. That's not what I'm worried about, I whispered, though I wasn't sure he heard me. I lay awake long after he drifted off, listening to the storm, feeling the subtle pull of the cuff that tethered us together. His breathing was steady, warm against the cold air. It should have been unbearable, being this close to him. Instead, it felt dangerous in a way I couldn't admit. Day 2 broke harsher. The storm showed no sign of relenting. Snow pressed against the cabin like a living thing, howling through the cracks. We rationed food crackers, jerky, a few stale chocolate bars, and melted snow in a pot over the fire. Every move became a dance of forced cooperation. When he reached for the kettle, I had to follow. When I tried to stretch, he was pulled with me. It was maddening, intimate in ways neither of us wanted to acknowledge. At one point, I bent to tie my bootlace and accidentally yanked him forward. He crashed into me, chest to chest, his breath hot against my cheek. For a heartbeat too long, we froze. His eyes flickered anger, confusion, something else. Watch it, he muttered, stepping back, but his voice wasn't steady. Sure, I said lightly, though my heart was hammering. Wouldn't want to ruin your personal space bubble. He ignored me, but I caught the faint flush at the edge of his ears. By afternoon, boredom set in. I sat by the fire, sketching shapes into the dust on the table with my free hand, while Ethan cleaned his knife with military precision. So, I said, breaking the silence, got anyone waiting for you back home? He didn't look up. No, wow, that was quick. No tragic ex. No secret family? Come on, detective, throw me a bone. Finally, his eyes lifted, hard as steel. Why do you care? I shrugged. We're stuck here. Might as well pretend we're human beings and not just enemies. The word hung in the air. Enemies. For a moment, something softened in his face. I don't have anyone, he said quietly. Not anymore. The rawness in his voice surprised me. It wasn't the answer I expected, and it wasn't the wall of hostility he usually hid behind. I swallowed, throat tight. Yeah. Same. We didn't say more, but the silence felt different this time. Not hostile. Heavy with things unspoken. That night, the cold cut sharper. The firewood stack was dwindling, and though neither of us wanted to admit it, we needed body heat. Ethan shifted on the bed, lying stiffly on his side. You should get closer, he muttered. I blinked. Excuse me? You're shivering, he said, not looking at me. Don't make me repeat myself. I hesitated, then moved closer, our arms brushing, then our chests. The warmth was immediate, startling. His breath hitched, just barely, but enough for me to hear. Don't read into this, he warned, voice low. Wouldn't dream of it, I whispered, though the lie burned my tongue. Because in that cramped cabin, with the storm raging outside, I was already reading into everything. Every brush of his hand, every flicker in his eyes, every unguarded second where he wasn't the detective and I wasn't the informant. We were just two men, chained together, surviving. And the line between survival and something else was blurring fast. By the third morning, the storm had eased slightly, but not enough to free us. The air in the cabin was thick with tension, not just from the cold, not just from hunger. From us. He caught me staring once, and instead of snapping, he just held my gaze. Long enough that I had to look away, heart hammering like I'd been caught stealing. That was when I realized the most dangerous thing in this cabin wasn't the storm. It was the way I was starting to want him. The third day arrived like a punishment wrapped in frost. Ethan had been awake for hours, sitting by the fire with his eyes half-lidded, jaw tight, thinking or maybe pretending to think. I wasn't sure which. The snow outside had softened into a dull gray, falling in heavy flakes that layered the world in white. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of burnt wood and stale chocolate bars, but it was warm enough to keep us alive. Barely. "I'm going to try the door again," Ethan muttered, his tone cautious. I frowned. "You really think it's going to work? It's been 3 days. "I have to try," he said, standing and stretching, the cuffs yanking us together. "We can't just wait to die in here." I followed him, shivering despite the fire, thinking about the absurdity of our situation. Mean informant, reluctant participant in countless chaotic schemes, and him, the brilliant, infuriating detective I had despised for years, now leading us toward salvation. Or failure. The door was frozen shut. Ethan slammed his shoulder against it, then his palm, then the edge of a wooden chair, all to no avail. He cursed under his breath, loud enough for me to flinch. "You okay?" I asked, standing close. His shoulder brushed mine when he spun, and something electric sparked in the touch. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at me, and for a brief, terrible second, I saw through the armor he wore so tightly. A flicker of vulnerability, a glimmer of fear, and something else, something softer. "Yeah," he finally muttered, looking away, "just cold, and tired, and frustrated." I didn't say anything, but I understood more than he probably intended. Breakfast was a grim affair. A few crackers, some water, and the last of the jerky. We ate in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, each acutely aware of the other. The cuffs had made sleeping together unavoidable, and the closeness lingered into every waking moment. Ethan broke the quiet finally. "I don't normally do this," he said, voice low. "Stuck in a cabin, handcuffed to someone, vulnerable, and yet." His gaze lingered, sharp and probing, and my stomach twisted. "You're bearable." I choked on a laugh. "Bearable?" He gave me a side glance, a corner of his mouth twitching as if he almost smirked. "Yeah, barely. But it's something." "Barely bearable, I'll take it as a compliment," I said, though my heart was hammering. The snow had slowed by midday, leaving only a thick layer that stretched to the horizon. Ethan suggested we check the windows for escape, each flake outside glowing in the pale light. I helped him push at the shutters, our arms brushing again. That spark, that tension, was impossible to ignore. At one point, I slipped on the icy floor. Ethan's arms were around me before I could catch myself. His chest pressed against mine, warm, solid, and startlingly intimate. "Careful," he said, though his voice wasn't harsh. "Thanks," I whispered, and stayed close for a heartbeat too long. He didn't move away. Hours passed with small tasks: stacking firewood, melting snow, rationing supplies. The proximity, the physical contact forced by the cuffs, and the mutual need to survive combined into something more dangerous than hunger or frostbite. Something unspoken simmered in every glance, every accidental touch. Finally, the tension broke in a different way. We argued. "I'm tired of sitting here," I shouted, pacing the cabin floor with the cuffs pulling taut. "We're not going to die if we try, Ethan." He slammed his fist against the table. "Do you think I haven't tried? Do you think I enjoy being stuck here with you like this?" I froze, staring at him, seeing past the anger to the sharp edge of something else: frustration. Yes, but also fear for us, for the storm, for something he couldn't admit. "I don't know what you want me to do," I said quietly. "You," he said, voice barely a whisper. "I want you to survive, and maybe, not just survive, maybe something more." My heart stopped. I stared at him. The firelight painted his features, highlighting the set of his jaw, the intensity of his eyes. He looked human, fragile, and beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. I swallowed. Maybe I want that too. And in that confession, that bare acknowledgement of desire, the distance between us collapsed. The first kiss was slow, tentative. The firelight flickered across our faces as I leaned in, drawn to him despite the cuffs, despite years of rivalry. His lips met mine with a hesitation that quickly melted into a need I hadn't expected. Hands explored carefully, testing boundaries, discovering softness beneath the hard lines we had both drawn. It was clumsy, awkward, desperate, and yet perfect. When we finally broke apart, breathing hard, I could see the same mixture of fear and longing mirrored in his eyes. The storm outside had become background noise. The cabin wasn't a prison, Anna Maria, it was a sanctuary. Hours later, when the fire dwindled to embers and the snowstorm had calmed to a gentle whisper, we lay side by side on the bed, wrists still cuffed together. The intimacy we had forged was tender now, vulnerable in a way neither of us had anticipated. "I think we might make it out of this," I whispered, tracing patterns on his arm. "Maybe," he said, his hand brushing mine, letting go of the distance we had maintained for so long. "But I'm not letting go of you. Not yet. Not ever, if I can help it." I swallowed, heart clenching. "I'd like that," I admitted softly. "I'd really like that." And for the first time in 3 days, there was no arguing, no tension, no Fahrenheit. The warmth between us, fragile and new, but undeniable. By the end of the 3rd day, the storm had cleared completely. Sunlight spilled across the cabin floor, turning snowflakes into glittering crystals. Outside, the world was pure, cold, and beautiful. Ethan worked quickly to free us, the cuffs finally clicking open. We rubbed our wrists, flexed fingers, but neither of us moved away from the other. "I never thought I'd be glad to see you alive," he said quietly. "Guess we learn new things about each other in a storm," I replied, smiling despite the cold. He studied me for a long moment. "Yeah, and maybe some of them aren't so bad." I stepped closer, closing the last of the distance. "Maybe not." His hand found mine, warm and firm. We didn't need words. We had survived the storm, survived each other, and somehow found something stronger than the blizzard outside. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We emerged from the cabin like survivors from another world. The snow outside had softened into powdery perfection, glinting under a pale morning sun. Our breath formed clouds as we stepped into the cold, but the chill didn't matter. Not when I had him beside me. Ethan's hand found mine without hesitation. The cuffs were gone, but the connection remained. My fingers laced with his, tight and warm, as if neither of us would let go ever again. "You're still here," he said quietly, almost to himself. I grinned. "I think I'm going to stick around. Might even be permanent." He shot me a look, half annoyed, half amused. "You know this isn't going to be easy. Out there, people, friends, family, society, they don't exactly approve of this." I shrugged, letting the snow crunch beneath my boots. "We survived a snowstorm handcuffed together. I think we can survive them." He smiled, just a flicker at first, then wider. It was the first time I had seen him relax fully in days. No detective, no enemy, no masks, just Ethan, human and real, and me, dangerously close to letting myself feel everything. The weeks that followed were a revelation. We returned to the city, where lights glimmered against the dark streets and life went on as if we hadn't vanished for 3 days in a blizzard. But we had changed. Everything had changed. The office, once a battlefield, now felt like neutral ground. Ethan and I learned to navigate the world together. Public appearances, skeptical colleagues, whispered judgments, we faced it all side by side. Every glance that questioned our bond, every raised eyebrow, became another reason to hold onto each other tighter. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the memory of icy walls and snow-driven terror haunted us. But those memories no longer carried only fear, they held warmth, intimacy, and the first spark of love that had survived the storm. One evening, we found ourselves at a quiet diner, the kind with yellow lights that softened the harsh edges of the city. We had been out for hours, filing reports and dodging prying questions, and now we sat across from each other, hands touching under the table. "I used to hate you," I said softly, watching his eyes flicker with surprise. "I know," he replied, his fingers brushing mine. "And I hated you too, more than I ever wanted to admit." We laughed quietly, a sound that felt like a release of all the tension we had carried. "But," I continued, "being chained to you, surviving that storm, changed something. I trailed off, unsure of how to put the storm, the fear, the unexpected desire into words. "You don't have to explain," he said, leaning closer. "I feel it too. I've never felt anything like that before, being forced to rely on someone, to be vulnerable, to want them near you even when you're supposed to hate them." I smiled, heart pounding. "Good, because I think I want to keep feeling it." He grinned, brushing his thumb over my knuckles. "Then let's make sure we do." Life became a delicate dance of honesty and courage. We faced friends and family. Some accepted immediately, smiles soft and open. Others needed time, their skepticism melting slowly in the face of our evident love. Every challenge only strengthened the bond forged in that cabin, during the storm that had tested every limit of patience, trust, and vulnerability. There were quiet moments, 2 lazy mornings in bed, sharing coffee and stories, laughter spilling freely. Moments where the world outside didn't exist, just him and me. Free, yet still tethered by a bond that had begun with iron cuffs and desperation. Ethan was different now, softer, more open, yet still sharp and brilliant in everything he did. He learned to let me in, to trust, to share fears and dreams, rather than hiding behind the detective mask. And I changed too. I stopped running, stopped hiding my heart behind sarcasm and caution. We were no longer enemy and informant. We were partners, lovers, survivors. The anniversary of the storm approached, a year since the cabin, the cuffs, the night we kissed for the first time. Ethan had a look in his eyes I had learned to read over months of quiet intimacy. "Remember this?" he asked, holding up a pair of antique handcuffs he had bought as a joke for the anniversary. I laughed, taking his hand. "I think I'll never forget." He pulled me close, forehead against mine, eyes locked. "I don't want to forget, ever. Those 3 days, they brought me to you, and I'm never letting go." I smiled, feeling warmth flood me. "Neither am I." The world outside might still be cold and judgmental, but inside, with him, it was always spring, always home. The years that followed were not perfect, but they were ours. We faced prejudice, whispers, and skepticism. Yet every trial became a reminder of the strength we had found in each other. Every storm outside paled in comparison to the one we had survived together in that cabin. We built a life defined not by what others expected, but by love, trust, and courage. A life where the past didn't haunt use it made us stronger. Where vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a bridge. And where intimacy wasn't dangerous, it was salvation. And in every quiet moment, I remembered the night the storm trapped us, the way our bodies had pressed together for warmth, the way our hearts had finally found the courage to speak a truth we had both denied for years. From that cabin, in that blizzard, handcuffed and forced together, we had learned something the world could never teach us. Love, when forged in fire or snow, was unstoppable. We survived the storm, together, and nothing else mattered. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.